Los Angeles stands on a bleak, dusty old desert. Some people would try to fool you and tell you it's a Mediterranean climate. Well, North Africa is in the Mediterranean, though it's pretty damn dry.
This is a story of whole towns and ecosystems destroyed, and underhanded deals that made some people very, very rich.
This is the story of a conflict that ensued when a town, thirsty for money, restless with ambition, and drunk with power, took the resources of a small farming community. This is the story of the California Water Wars.
For all its tough talk, Los Angeles is a very fragile construction. There was never really a reason for it to even exist. It has little in the way of natural resources. Most importantly, water. The story of the water wars in California begins when a young man called Fred Eaton took a camping trip up near the Sierras where he gazed down upon the Owens Lake.
Whereas a modern person would look down on a beautiful crystal clear lake and maybe see some beauty, Eaton saw nothing but waste. He looked down on that water and saw money. Money just going to waste, while Los Angeles got its water from a flimsy rig of ditches.
Eaton was the true mastermind behind the Los Angeles aqueduct. He was sneaky. If he lived today, he would have been called a bro. He was born into a prominent family who were among those who founded Pasadena, and was head of the LA City Water Company by age 19, and later became mayor of Los Angeles. It was Eaton who hired William Mulholland to dig ditches for him. After years, the two became friends, and Mulholland rose up through the ranks to become superintendent of the water system.
By 1903, Los Angeles tapped the Los Angeles River dry as the city grew uncontrollably.
In 1904, Eaton and Mulholland went on a buckboard whiskey binge across the Mojave Desert to go check out this whole Owens Lake thing that Eaton had spoken so highly of.
They got stinking drunk and left a trail of whiskey bottles there and back again, their minds filled with stealing water and making money.
The Owens Valley is a real deal desert. The mountains on both sides go up for miles and stop all the precipitation, and through the middle of it is this mighty, mighty river.
And they could divert this river using gravity all the way to Los Angeles. Eaton and Mulholland saw this and started salivating.
But the river was owned by the farmers of the Owens Valley, and it was being further developed by the federal government through the Bureau of Reclamation.
Now just imagine how this looks to the people who already live there. Here come a couple of hucksters, all fancy, speculating all over the place. In order to understand what the mindset was of people like Eaton and Mulholland, it's important to understand what the zeitgeist was of that time.
The scientific, technological, and industrial revolution of this time will one day be looked at as something comparable to the Renaissance. Think about it for a second.
Within a brief period of time, the technologies that we know and love today that have influenced our lives so much had first started to appear.
Electricity, automobiles, moving pictures, recorded sound, the telephone. They've all become better now, of course, but everything since then has basically been engineering.
You gotta remember, this is a time of extreme optimism. This is a time when people thought they could do anything. Of course we can build a city in the desert. There's water like 225 miles away. Of course we can build a giant aqueduct that goes all the way through the desert. Who's gonna tell us not to?
So Fred Eaton, being a total sleaze, started buying water rights in the Owens Valley for what farmers thought was a local irrigation project. They all thought Eaton was from the Reclamation Service from the federal government. His true intent was kept secret until the Los Angeles Times finally let it slip, gloating in triumph. By then, it was too late, and the city had bought most of the Owens River. Harry Chandler and Harrison Gray Otis of the Los Angeles Times had been in on it, of course, because of their connections with a real estate syndicate, featuring our old friend Henry Huntington, that had been in on the project as well.
The syndicate had bought up a ton of barren land in the San Fernando Valley, which they stood to make millions off of if it were to be irrigated. The citizens of Los Angeles had already bought the river. So of course they voted to have the aqueduct built to bring it to them.
The aqueduct began construction in 1905 in the miserable, impossible desert. The world had never seen anything like this. The pipe was massive, over 200 miles through the desert and mountains. It took 5 years to build, under budget and before schedule, a signature of Mulholland.
When the aqueduct was finished in 1913, it gave birth to the Los Angeles that we know today. Palm trees, famous people, the movie industry, the big fake Garden of Eden of Los Angeles that we know and love. The aqueduct irrigated the San Fernando Valley just as the syndicates had hoped, and soon orchards sprang up. And then tract homes, and guys like Henry Huntington became very rich. Super rich.
Then, more people started coming in thanks to the efforts of the LA Chamber of Commerce. This was the start of a vicious cycle. They build a giant straw to suck the water of some place and put it in another place, and this increases the value of property, so more people come and they have to get more water, and then more people come and they have to get more water, and so on and so on and so on, and you get it.
The aqueduct had only depleted the southern half of the Owens Valley, while the northern half kept on as usual. But now, Mulholland was back, and he wanted the north. The Owens Valley was still a flourishing agricultural center. Relations between Los Angeles and the Owens Valley were surprisingly good, until a drought came, and pressure came on the city to acquire more water.
By 1924, half the crops were gone as Mulholland bought up more and more land and siphoned off more and more water, and the Owens Lake finally dried up. In November of 1924, the aqueduct was seized by over 100 citizens, led by the president of a local bank. They opened up a gate of the aqueduct, and the Owens River went pouring down a ditch onto the desert floor. The entire community got involved. A group of 700 went down to a gate along the aqueduct called the Alabama Gate, where there was a turnout valve, and so they effectively stopped the flow of the water to Los Angeles. Mulholland sent the police. The local sheriff stood between the officers and the group. The citizens kept occupying the aqueduct, so the city of Los Angeles claimed they were going to work out some kind of settlement to hopefully buy these people out.
The people of the Owens Valley believed they were going to get a fair price for their remaining water rights. That's what they were told, after all. But there would be no deal. City agents were already buying up land and water rights in the Owens Valley. Whole towns were being bought up. The dynamiting of the aqueduct had begun. The people of the Owens Valley dynamited the aqueduct again and again.
While it may seem like an injustice was done to the people of the Owens Valley, it's important to remember that not too long before this, the people who settled the Owens Valley had stolen the water and land from the native people who lived there before, and banished them out to the rockier areas.
The city tried but failed to convict anyone for the dynamiting of the aqueduct. Mulholland took it in his own hands and sent 600 armed guards out there and imposed martial law. And soon, the dynamiting stopped. Mulholland wanted to put a reservoir in the Owens Valley, and there was really only one good place to put it. And then Mulholland found out it had already been bought up. It had already been bought up by his old friend, Fred Eaton.
Eaton had always been a bit of a bastard, but now he was showing his true colors. He demanded $1 million for the land. Mulholland told Eaton to get lost.
In a strange twist of fate, this decision would wind up breaking both men.
In 1928, Eaton's finances had crumbled up as he tried to hold out to sell his remaining land, yet to no avail. He would die a broken man. Mulholland decided to build the reservoir somewhere else, which wound up being out in the San Francisco Canyon. The dam, of course, catastrophically failed in 1928, but you probably already know everything about that by now, don't you?
The water wars are never truly over when you live in a megalopolis in the middle of the desert. In 1970, they built another aqueduct that sucked all the groundwater out of the Owens Valley. All groundwater vegetation began to die, and a long-term desertification of the Owens Valley has continued on ever since.
In the 30s, Los Angeles blasted a new aqueduct to the Colorado River in Arizona. Then Mono Lake, north of the Owens Valley, was hooked up to the aqueduct, and it too was drained down. The Mono Lake still stands only because of intense conservation efforts, though it's saltier than the ocean now because of all the siphoning.
And now, as we continue into year after year of what seems like an endless drought in California, this is far from over. And where will the water come from? Where is it all going to come from? Are they going to desalinate the ocean? Are they going to pump water down from Alaska? Or will it all just dry up, leaving it a gigantic ghost town, a West Coast Detroit, only drier? Only time will tell what's going to happen on our terrifying world.